Good morning, everybody. Reality is fantasy, and reality is dissolving. To understand what I mean, I need to clarify this. Because reality is a concept and a shared fantasy for now. So, this is the current description of it. So, it means reality is a shared fantasy space that is influenced by everybody participating and by culture, by moral views. It was influenced by religion. Maybe this is the reason why Nietzsche was concerned about nihilism emerging as a new shared fantasy or threat reality. Nihilism as like a ice block, and we are the Titanic running towards it, towards nihilism, because religion has been kicked out of the shared fantasy of reality. God is dead. That's what he claimed. And therefore the shared fantasy of humanity is changing. Something is going away, some guidance, morality, and so on and so on. So it's a religious shift, a cultural shift, a historical shift, and he sensed that we need something. We need something in our shared fantasy that makes life worth living. And if that thing that guided us and provided us with meaning, which was largely religion, is going, we need something else. I would argue that in the place of, Nietzsche said he came up with several concepts, not only with the Übermensch, he also have the concept of amor fati, and he also has the concept of eternal recurrence. But I would argue that now hundreds of years later, the result is not that we have created a better shared reality fantasy, so a better shared fantasy in reality. We have rather allowed the individuality and the identity politics and these ideas to let everybody live in their own fantasy, and these fantasies are narcissism breeding grounds. It has turned out to be narcissism breeding grounds because people are allowed to create a grandiose sense of self that is not corrected, not guided by a strong and diverse, rich form of shared fantasy as a bigger community. So I also told you that narcissism is always connected to victimhood. So it's always that, there is, as if there is a layer in society, in the shared fantasy of society, this is reality. There is a layer, and the people don't want to go through this layer for several reasons. They say these are all narcissists, or the system is flawed, They're all hypocrites, they are cruel, they are stupid, they are this, they are that. Or for some reason the system is flawed and therefore they don't even try, and therefore their grandiosity, because they are so grandiose, they have all this potential, but because the system is flawed, they are a victim of the system. By the way, therefore we have to teach our children to get through this layer, to get to the good stuff. And for many people it means to get through narcissism. We need to integrate narcissism in ourselves in some way, the healthy form of narcissism, without becoming a monster or a person with no self at all, so with a false self, to deal with narcissism that is all pervasive in society, okay? So I'm like deep seek thinking, generating, yeah. AIs, by the way, they also could provide us with reality testing in some way, because I was thinking about this deceptive lie, virtual reality, this term. Because virtual reality, yeah, it's a very alternative reality, because there is no, there is not the same, there is not other people that correct us or give us a sense of a reality checking. They don't correct us. A virtual reality does not correct us. It rather is an expression of the individualistic thinking that we have, that we create and enter the reality that we like. We only go into social groups that validate us, not social groups that criticize us. We go to a therapist that is kind of not confronting us too much. So a good therapist would confront us with very uncomfortable things. Of course, carefully, and it's their job to do this carefully and in the way that we can still take it. But yeah, AIs also are different in the way they confront us. So I would say DeepSeek is more critical than ChatGPT. We just have to know this, and we have to use AI, if we use it, in my opinion, in a way that we don't try to only validate us, our ideas, our grandiosity, but to rather correct us. In this way, it can really give us maybe a form of reality checking. So it means reality checking, reality testing means to test our self-image against an external reality that is based on a bigger consensus, on more opinions. So I believe a society, a group of people with many diverse, not genders, with many diverse cultures and personalities, and people with many different kinds of people, of rich, richer, poor, all kinds of people together, different social layers, and all of that can give us a good reality testing, because we will confront it with many, many, many colors, different levels of individuation, different levels of external or internalized aggression. So this can give us a good reflection of who we are. We can test ourselves against this reality. But if we avoid it, if we live just in bubbles, we will get grandiose. If you wake up in your super perfect family, everything is already AI optimized. You have people taking care of your children. You have the perfect everything, you know what I'm saying? And then you get in your super isolating car that is driving autonomously into the next bubble where you are worshipped at your work and so on. This is not what I mean when I say reality testing. Reality must be a little bit uncomfortable. It must be a layer that corrects us. So we need struggle and the roughness. This is how it was back in the time. But we tend to go somewhere where we choose our echo chambers, our social groups, and we avoid every correction from the outside. It's like parents that are doing the laissez-faire style, that don't ever interact with their children, that don't correct them, that always say, "Oh, that's great. Oh, that's so great. Oh, that's so great." You know, my brother just recently sent me a meme where a child is pouring milk into a cornflakes bowl, and it pours out the whole milk bottle. And a little bit also goes into the cornflakes bowl, but the rest is spread all over the kitchen. And then the father says, "Oh, that's so great. You're doing it so good." So, yeah, this is not reality testing. This creates narcissists. Um, I need a coffee. Be right back. Yeah, so this is the reason why, in my opinion, reality is that what we call reality, when we talk about reality testing, is dissolving at the same time, creating a breeding ground for narcissism. It is because we are creating a world where we reduce the shared fantasies that correct us, uncomfortable groups, uncomfortable realities. We avoid them more and more. So, yes, every self image, every human being has a fantasy and a shared fantasy about who they are. This can be the real self, this can be a false self. To speak in Jungian terms, the self of a narcissist is the persona and nothing else. There is only the created image. But a healthy person might also have persona or personas, created masks. We always play a role. This is also normal. So we should never over pathologize us. While self reflection is a lot of work to get it right. Um, but we also have a real self, a real identity, and it's a vulnerable self. It's not fragile. And when we go into an uncomfortable reality with other people, it can be corrected and feel it. It's vulnerable, can be painful, but it's not fragile. So we don't overreact. We don't revenge for that. We are thankful. We should be thankful to be criticized. We should be thirsty and hungry to be criticized, whether it's real people or artificial intelligences that tell us your idea is stupid, or your idea is good on this and this aspect, but you need to look at these counter arguments, and so on and so on. So, yeah, the reason why reality as we know it, as a shared fantasy, that is kind of not as we want it, but it is different. It is uncomfortable. It's changing to an infantile state where we say, like a child, Mama and Daddy, I want reality to be this way. And if it is not, I start crying and screaming and I get violent. I will punch you for this. And then I want to get this reality. And yeah, so we create these reality bubbles instead. So Nietzsche wanted to, I assume, to create a cultural, philosophical, maybe spiritual idea of a shared reality for everybody, create new values that give meaning and reality testing to create strong individuals. What we do is not that. What we do today is we create fantastic spaces, private spaces without reality testing, and everybody can be what they want to be without being corrected. This was grandiose, I'm sorry. I mean the drinking coffee, not my theory. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Um, yeah, so we're living in these closed up bubbles. It's a little bit like in the movie The Matrix, right, where everybody is creating his self image, and when we go into a virtual reality, we might create a new avatar of us, a new persona based on the other persona. So we create a fake based on a fake. And then we are able to validate all of this, okay? Because the virtual world can be designed the way we want it to be. We can ask an artificial intelligence to create exactly the persons we want to interact with, and so on. We only go and meet with selected peoples that only, yeah, validate us. Yeah, narcissists only have yes sayers around them. They only have codependent people, and this is a tendency in the whole society. Or instead, isolation. Rather nobody than this. Yeah, this is atomization of people, atomization of clusters like families or all kinds of groups where people came together to get reality checks, to be corrected. These things are atomized and dissolved. Corona, the pandemic, also led to exactly this breeding ground of antisocial behavior and narcissism. We will get to a point that we find interacting with other people gets more and more and more awkward till to a spot where we are not even able to do this anymore. Um, so reality testing, reality checking will probably become impossible. And I don't know where it will lead to, but to a lot of anxiety in people when they are taken out of their fantasy bubbles. They will be paranoid, full of anxiety, fear, and they will not have the ability to see other people as their friends anymore. To, you know, imagine a person in Mexico going out in the street. There is thousands and thousands of people, and they have the perception that every one of them is potentially my friend. I can ask them. So if I have a problem, I ask them. They might help me. In China, wherever a lot of people are, this is a strong group that creates a sense of external fantasy, shared fantasy, reality testing, and a strong sense of self. But when we have these isolated bubbles, it creates a sense of grandiosity. It's not a real based stable self, because when this bubble is attacked, let's say we have the technology gives up, we have a collapse in some way, so we have to leave our bubble now. Then suddenly, awkwardly, we are confronted with all the people that have all these grandiose fantasies and no reality testing, and they have to interact. It's not possible to make this work. Okay, this is just more like an open talk. I feel like um, I'll just put it out there. Let's see what comes from it. Maybe you have some comments. I don't know where we go. By the way, there's this singer who recently passed away, rest in peace. I don't remember the name exactly now. He was the singer of Faithless, and he sang, "Reality is dreaming." And in some sense, he was right. I just repeat once again the essence of maybe this talk, and then I'm finished. It is healthy to have a shared fantasy, which is including an idea, an image of who you are. It's healthy to have self-esteem, but in healthy people, both the self and the self-esteem are rooted in a functional reality testing and in kind of an internal um, representation of that. It's vulnerable, not fragile, the self. Um, and this shared fantasy that we carry it outside, come outside for the night, and we test it, and we get corrected by other people. And this creates this shared space of fantasy shaped by culture, by philosophical ideas, which is culture. Politics is also a part of culture. Moral ideas, all of this shapes the shared fantastic space. And only when we commit to it and don't exclude ourselves from it, we are part of this reality. If we say we are a victim of this reality, we exclude ourselves from this reality to cater to our grandiose sense of self. Or if we exclude ourselves from this reality for other reasons, because we can. Okay. And I see this reality dissolving in today's world, because then there cannot be any more consensus. And if you have no consens, because some people say, oh, I don't, Christianity is dead, because people say, well, Christianity came and destroyed that was there before them, the shamanism and stuff. Therefore, I'm a victim of it. Therefore, I don't participate in the system. People don't align with the state we live anymore. They say everything is bad because of this politics, because of this, or because of that. I'm a victim. I don't want to participate. Therefore, I isolate myself and I create a grandiose false self-image. Okay? So, therefore, we need to have this resilience. We have to teach it to our children. We have to integrate some narcissism in ourselves, whatever is holding us back, to push through this uncomfortable, flawed system we live in. It's not an excuse. We're not victims of it. All right. And yeah, I claim this reality is being dissolved because we have this tendency, this trend worldwide, or in the Western world at least, that people are atomized, which means isolated, and they have the tendency, because we are fantastic creatures, fantasies are one nature, and reality is also all only a concept. It can also only be conceptualized. Is a fantastic reality, is a fantastic concept in that context that I'm speaking of. It's not an absolute reality. We tend to create our own bubble, and the more we do this, and the less we test it in a shared fantasy space with all society, the less we lose contact to reality. And the coming up technologies, the tendencies of having small little separated living spaces where everybody can live in his bubble and everybody has artificial intelligence to cater to his fantastic need to visualize the perfect private shared fantasy. Reality is dissolving.